Here's the thing. For everybody listening, don't make the same mistake the Bengals just did in any facet of your life.
People are going to get hurt. It's the hockey season. And if they want to make the deep run to the playoffs, they're going to need players. And Ben Hutton's a good defenseman that can help.
I don't think they will. If they don't have Anthony Davis, I'm saying it right now, if Anthony Davis is out for the playoffs, they don't make it out of the first round.
I was very tempted to just put defense.
What about the Jared Cook play on the sideline? And then Mason Crosby's 55-yard field goal or something like that. That was a good one.
Come on, Austin and I have been saying this ever since Joe Burrow got injured.
I just do not see Harden putting in the same amount of effort into each game. Yeah, I honestly believe that's why he hasn't won a championship yet.
That's a perfect name. What you said, name brand players. Like, it's not the great value Target brand toilet paper or whatever. It's the Charmin Ultra Strong.
I swear we didn't script that.
Fultz is injured and he really hasn't lived up to the potential of being the number one overall pick when he was selected by the Sixers.
Like you said, Ovechkin, he's getting older. He hasn't been playing as well as I imagined. He's one of the greatest goal scorers of all time, but he hasn't started off this season as hot as I would hope.
How is Joe Burrow going to get the ball to them if his butt is already on the ground and he finally decides who to throw to?
I don't really think the Dodgers are going to make the World Series this year. I feel like they'll make it to the NLCS.
And then I want to talk about the Fernando Tatis extension because that really surprised me. Because he's so young. You see the Chiefs beefing up their O-line, and then you have the Buccaneers beefing up their defensive line.
Ingrained in the life of Tom Brady and what winning actually looks like, I think will be a very good move for Bruce Arians and this Bucs organization.
Hi, I'm Jeff Allen, and you're listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our 71st episode. Make sure to check out our latest interview with Julie Dobbs, who does ticket tickers for the infamous Dallas radio station The Ticket. She also is a host for the Mom Game Pod, who just interviewed Marty Turco, the famous Dallas Stars goaltender, and they have interviewed Ian Kinsler, so make sure to check that out. Also, make sure to check out our 70th episode where we did a semifinals review and Stanley Cup final preview. And now, today, for our 71st episode, we will be looking over the most significant, the whole wide receiver drafted in the 2017 NFL draft class and determining the most significant wide receiver from this class. In general, there were 32 wide receivers drafted in 2017. We'll start with 32. Austin, I'll let you explain.
Yeah, so we're doing something new here. We're just trying to review what teams made great selections based on where they drafted and what teams made terrible selections. This is formed sort of in a redraft or ranking them from 1 to 32, and we'll start with 32. And this is just to make it easier for us to see which players have stayed the same in their ranking, what players have fallen, what players have risen. And we'll start with 32. We have DeAngelo Yancey. He was drafted 175th overall by the Packers, and he never played an NFL game. He was the only player who was drafted from the wide receiver class not to play an NFL game yet. So that obviously puts him at the bottom, as we were never able to see him in an NFL uniform.
Yeah, and Packers whiff on a draft pick. But we can move on to number 31. We got Ardarius Stewart. He was drafted 79th overall by the Jets, and his last recorded stats were from 2017. So he did play, unlike DeAngelo Yancey, but still, you're drafted 79th overall, and you don't play for you haven't played since 2017. That's why we have him at the second to last spot. But who you got at 30?
So at 30, we have Carlos Henderson, drafted 82nd overall by the Broncos. He also has not played in the NFL yet, but at least he plays for the CFL team. He's another player that somebody was that whiffed on, especially at 82nd. It's a lot more forgivable for a team like the Packers drafting at 175 to go with more of a risk play. But the last two, like we mentioned, are the 79th pick and the 82nd pick. Those are disappointing to see third round selections not playing or playing very seldomly in the NFL.
Yeah, the top 100 picks are where you can get some quality players. And then if you can find some gems in the later round that really separate the good teams from the great teams. And we'll get to some wide receivers that they could have selected at 79 and 82 later on. But 29, we have Amaro Darboh. He was drafted 106th overall by the Seahawks. He last played in 2017. He didn't have much yards, drafted 106th. Still kind of close to top 100. Maybe someone slips down. So that's why we have him at 28. Who you got at 27?
So yeah, at 27, we have Malachi Dupre. He was drafted 247th overall by the Packers and last played in 2018. Again, this is 247th. This is very late in the draft, and so it's more understandable for this guy not being able to play as long in the NFL, but at least he did play it, unlike most of the people that we mentioned before.
Yeah, and just by coincidence, you ended up with both the picks the Packers selected. So just a little thing to laugh off. Now we have Stacy Coley at 26. He was drafted 219th overall by the Vikings. A little bit earlier than 247th, but last played in 2018, and he just had a few more yards than Malachi Dupre. So that's why we have him at 26. Who you got at 25?
Did you just say Malachi Dupre as Malachi Dupre?
Yes, I did. My bad.
That's a good one. I like that. So next we have at 25, uh, Jihu Chesson. I know Chesson sounds right, but I don't know if the J is silent or not. But he was drafted 139th overall by the Chiefs and last played in 2018. Another player drafted after 100 that did not play past 1 year after his draft selection. So he didn't make it far, and a lot of the people at the bottom here, they didn't. So it's a theme throughout.
Yeah. So after Chesson, we have Robert Davis. He was drafted 209th overall by Washington. Last played in 2019. So about uh, along after 139 and at 209. So that's why we have him over Chesson. Who do you have at 23?
So at 23, we have Chad Williams. He was drafted 98th by the Cardinals. So this is another one of the selections like Darius Stewart and Carlos Henderson that are in the top 100 that you expect them to at least make some sort of NFL roster for an extended period of time, and that just wasn't the case. He last played in 2019 and didn't have much stats to his name.
Yeah, and now we move on to Shelton Gibson, who's drafted 166th overall by the Eagles. Last played for the Eagles in 2018, but he played in the Super Bowl. And Austin pointed out this in Ryan Fitzpatrick when he got yanked the other way. He threw, or it was wrong guy.
Wrong guy. Yeah, that was Matt Collins.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but
He's
Shelton
another guy that
Gibson
won the Super Bowl.
last played in 2018, like we mentioned. He only played one special team snap during the Super Bowl. One snap. But that was enough for us to say, yeah, he's better than all the guys before him. He played in a Super Bowl, made his part, probably did the best he's ever played in. But we can move on to the next guy. Number 21, we have Ryan Switzer. He was drafted 133rd overall by the Cowboys. Last played for Pittsburgh in 2019. He has some great kick return and punt return stats, and that's what he was mainly used for. However, his abilities wide receiver wise were limited as he was mostly just a returner, and it's hard to make it as far as others when you're primarily just a returner. But he did play last in 2019 and is currently a free agent.
Yeah, I remember as soon as he got drafted, people made comparisons to him and Cole Beasley. He definitely did not live up to those. He was traded by the Cowboys to the Rams and then ended up on the Steelers. But now we go on to Trent Taylor, who was drafted 177th overall by the 49ers, now on the Bengals. So he's higher than Switzer because he was drafted 44 picks later and he has a contract, unlike Switzer. But who do you got at 19?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, that was the first player that we actually had that's still current. Now we go to a player who's last played in 2020, so that means he played last season, but he's currently a free agent. And we decided to because we're looking at last year's stats, we can't look at this year's stats. All these players are still in the same playing field, and while Noah Brown, the player at number 19, who was drafted 239th overall by the Cowboys, he's a free agent, and with his draft pick, for him to still be current in the NFL, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and he's definitely got a lot more playing time last year, and he's a great run blocker as a wide receiver and can make some good catches sometimes. Now we move on to Isaiah McKenzie, who's drafted 172nd overall by the Broncos. He's now on the Bills. He has a couple hundred more yards than Noah Brown, so that's why we have him at 18 above Noah Brown, but I'll let you move on to number 17.
So at number 17, we have Isaiah Ford, another player that's currently a free agent but played last in 2020. He was drafted 237th overall by the Dolphins, and I definitely expect him to find a team. As I thought that he played relatively well when he was given the opportunity uh, with the Dolphins last year. Um, he's somebody that is more of a fast guy and can make some runs sometimes, but he didn't score a touchdown, but he had 520 yards in his career. So we thought that was enough to put him at number 17.
Yeah, now we move on to number 16 with David Moore, who I believe signals our first ever wide receiver with a career yardage over 1,000. As his total career yards are 1,163 yards. So that's why we have him here, and he's currently on the Panthers. Now we move to 15.
Yeah, so David Moore, I just wanted to mention, is much more of a touchdown guy than yardage guy. He had a lot of great plays close to the end zone and can make some runs, and he's probably the first significant player on this list. He's somebody who can actually play good minutes and get good yards when he's given the opportunity. But now we move on to 15, and we have Josh Malone. Josh Malone was drafted 128th overall by the Bengals and is now on the Jets. Another player that's just like David Moore is more of a Josh Malone's more of a guy who's fast and hasn't really got an opportunity because of injuries. And we're more looking at prospects here. He's only caught one touchdown and only has 91 career yards. However, he's somebody who's more of a return guy, anyways, and we see him in the future being a potential good player.
Yeah, that's true. Now we move on to Chad Hansen, who's drafted 141st overall by the Jets. Last played for Houston for 2020, but he's a little bit better than Josh Malone because he was selected later. So that's why we have him there. Who do you got?
Yeah, so number 13, we have Tawan Taylor. He was drafted 72nd overall by the Titans. He's now on the Texans, and he's another one of those players that's been riddled with injuries throughout his career. I know he's been on I believe he was on the Browns recently, and never even played a snap. I think, or he didn't play much when he was on the Browns, and that really hindered his growth. But we have seen enough of him to think that he will be a good player in the future, as his stats show that from his time with the Titans. But we'll see if he can get over his injury woes next season, and that's why we have him here.
Yes, you are correct about he had a brief stint with Cleveland for the past 2 years. He was targeted twice and did not record a reception. Now, here's where some people may be mad. I don't think they'll be mad, but you never know. Number 12, John Ross, who, if you remember, set the combine record for 4.22 seconds, 0.02 seconds faster than Chris Johnson. And he was 9th overall. He's now on the Giants, and he has only played 27 games his whole career, and he has 733 yards. I believe he was only drafted. Most of his being drafted so high was because he set the combine record for the 40-yard dash. And it really did not work out for the Bengals because they just selected Jamar Chase as a wide receiver in the previous draft. So, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, he did have a good college career at Washington. However, I definitely believe that his speed was the main reason why I was selected so late. I mean, so early. Uh, and he's one of only 3 first-round selections that are uh, wide receivers. There's 3 here, and spoiler, none of them are above 5th. So that kind of shows you how late draft picks, especially for wide receivers who are hard to draft, can really be make or break. So next we
And
have, okay, you go.
And just to interrupt, and it's such a premium pick. Like it's the 9th overall pick in the draft, and you select a wide receiver, and that just really didn't turn out well. But you can continue.
Yeah, so next we have Matt Collins at 11. He was drafted 118th overall by the Eagles and is now in the Dolphins. He made that infamous catch that uh, Kevin alluded to earlier when he caught the pass from Ryan Fitzpatrick as Ryan Fitzpatrick's face is getting ripped off against the Raiders, and obviously they score a field goal to win that game and put them in prime spot to potentially make the playoffs. We know they didn't because the Bills tried really hard and that didn't turn out too great, but he still made that great catch. And another reason why we have him above guys like John Ross above him is he was not a primary piece on the Super Bowl team with the Eagles back in 2017, but he did play 17 offensive snaps and I think 6 or something special team snaps. So he played enough of a role to be a significant piece, and that's why we have him here at 11.
Yeah, now at number 10, speaking of the Raiders, Zay Jones just joined the Raiders, and he is currently playing for them now. He was drafted by the Bills 37th overall. So he did well, but um, didn't live up to the expectations when you're at the 37th overall pick. So that's why we have him at 10. But who you got at 9?
So at 9, we have Josh Reynolds, a guy who was drafted 117th overall by the Rams and is now in the Titans. Um, he's another guy that it was a good selection for his pick. We have him as the 9th best wide receiver selected, and he was drafted 117th. So that was a good selection by the Rams.
Yeah, and now he's currently playing for the Titans, and that's going to be a very interesting wide receiver core with oh shoot, why am I forgetting the guy? It's the guy from Ole Miss, and then you have Julio, and now you got Reynolds who can fill in as the third wide
AJ
receiver.
Brown.
Oh, AJ Brown. Dang, my bad. Thanks. But now we can move on to number 8. We have D.D. Westbrook, who was drafted 110th overall by the Jags. He is still on the Jags, and he has a couple more yards than Reynolds. So that's why we have him just above Reynolds at 8. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so D.D. Westbrook's a guy that a lot of people saw after he left Oklahoma that he was going to be a great player, and he has faced a lot of injuries in his career. But he's another guy that we believe can turn it around. He has 1,720 yards for his career, and that was enough to put him here. Obviously, he was drafted 110th, which makes him a good draft pick by the Jags during his time. But we'll see if he can bond now with Trevor Lawrence and help expedite the rebuild that they're going through.
Yeah. Who do you have at 7?
So at 7, there's Curtis Samuel. He was drafted from Carolina or by Carolina at 40 and is now on Washington. We're getting to the point where 40 at 7, I mean, this is the worst selection. It is a second round choice that he would probably be the 5th or 6th wide receiver taken at this point, I believe. So it's not the worst selection in the world, but Curtis Samuel hopes to turn it around and get more targets from Ryan Fitzpatrick or whoever is the starter for the Washington football team.
Yeah, and he's also kind of used as sometimes we've seen him out of the backfield. I think he has a few rushing attempts. I'll double check on that. So he's a good offensive weapon. And now we can move on as soon as I see if he has a rushing attempt. He's also a good kick returner. I cannot find. He actually has rushed multiple times. He did a lot of more rushing this previous year. That could be because of Matt Rule being the head coach. So it's like you said, not a bad selection, but also not a great. Now at number 6, we have Corey Davis, drafted by the Titans 5th overall. That's much more of a premium in the 2017 NFL draft. Better than John Ross, though, because he's been more consistent, and he was a good wide receiver next to A.J. Brown. But now he's on the Jets. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so he was the first wide receiver taken off the board. So him to be at 6 is kind of, I don't know if it's supposed to be there, but it's much better than John Ross, who's the third wide receiver taken, and we have at 12. So it's a lot closer to where it should be. However, he isn't what he was aspired to be when he was drafted. But next we have at number 5 we have Mike Williams, our first guy that has a season with 1,000 yards. He had 1,001 yards in 2019, and he was drafted 7th. I do think that now we're getting to the premium crop of wide receivers in this draft. And him being the 5th best is acceptable for the second taken wide receiver of the draft. I don't know if he's worth a 7th overall pick, but definitely worth a first rounder probably. As even though he's not the best wide receiver on his team, that's Keenan Allen. I do believe that if he got on his own, he would have more yards, and he's definitely a good wide receiver. Here in this top 5, we're definitely gonna roll over the premium crop, like I mentioned before, and all of these guys are definitely worth it for their selection. And that includes Williams, even though it was a 7th overall pick.
Yeah, and he is a guy who may break out more and may become a good partner with Justin Herbert. But still, 7th, it's good, but I don't know. If there's a redraft, they're definitely not taking Mike Williams at 7th if you're the Chargers. Number 4, we have Juju Smith-Schuster. He was drafted by the Steelers with the 62nd overall pick, and he is still with the Steelers. He had 1,426 yards in 2018 and made the Pro Bowl in 2018. He's the first wide receiver that we have talked about to make the Pro Bowl. And we have him at 4 because he did get a lot of yards in 2018, but when after Antonio Brown left, he became the number 1 option, and he hasn't really fulfilled that role. And just the next 3 wide receivers we can see being better. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. This is the last of the guys that are cannot, or right now not number 1 wide receivers. Even if they are on their team, all the guys before this, I don't feel like should be number 1 wide receivers until they can prove it to us. These last 3 definitely can be or are number 1 wide receivers on their team, and even though this next guy is not a Pro Bowler, he definitely probably should have been multiple times in his career. And at number 3, we have Cooper Kupp. He was drafted at 69th overall by the Rams. By the way, Juju Smith-Schuster was our last second-round pick selection, and Mike Williams at 5 was the last first-round selection. So all of these guys are from the 3rd round or later, the top 3, which is very impressive. So like I mentioned, Cooper Kupp at 69th. He had 1,161 yards back in 2019, and has faced a lot of injuries, but he's an exceptional receiver. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's probably one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. And he's the best wide receiver on the Rams. And you could really tell how much the Rams missed him when he was injured during that Super Bowl run. I definitely think he makes much more of a difference if he plays, especially because the Rams offense was just broken in the Super Bowl. and he's probably going to do better with Matthew Stafford. I wonder, it may be even he may even do better if the Rams got another wide receiver, and then it's tough to double him. But any more thoughts before we move on?
No, but I think you hit it off well. So who do you have in number 2?
Number 2 is Chris Godwin, who's drafted by the Bucks with the 84th overall picks. He is still on the Bucks. He had 1,000 yards in. He had 1,333 yards in 2019. Made the Pro Bowl in 2019 and is a Super Bowl champ. And he, of course, gave his number 12 to Tom Brady. When Tom Brady came over, he can be a first option. We just haven't seen him in that yet because you have Mike Evans, and he battled some injuries this year, but still very good. However, he is not number 1 because I'll let you talk more about it, Austin. He wasn't a huge threat that was used in the Super Bowl. For many reasons, Gronk and then Mike Evans. But what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And to put it in perspective, we're not saying that Chris Godwin isn't as good as a number 1 wide receiver. He definitely could be. We just have yet to see him in that role. To also put it in perspective, the guy we have back at 30, the 82nd pick, and the guy we have back at 31, the 79th overall pick, were both selected above our top 2, which really concerns us. The Jets obviously could have really used Chris Godwin or this next wide receiver that we're about to mention to help further the success of Sam Darnold. The Broncos could have used him and maybe help Brock Osweiler save his job, or Travis Simeon, or who they were going to have at quarterback save their job, or maybe their wide receiver core would probably be the best in the NFL right now, as long as you look at Cortland Sutton and obviously all the moves they made recently with Jerry Jeudy. If they add Chris Godwin to that core, that's a really good wide receiver core, and obviously they have Noah Fant. So all these guys at the end are really, really good, and it's surprising to say the least that all of these teams missed on him. But Chris Godwin's a great wide receiver. We just have one above him, and that wide receiver is Kenny Galladay. He was drafted 96th overall by the Lions and is now in the Giants. He had 1,063 yards in 2018 and had 1,190 yards back in 2019. He also made the Pro Bowl in 2019 and probably should have made it in 2018 as well. He's faced a lot of injuries in his career, and the Giants really hope that he can be that dominant wide receiver that he was for his second and third season in the NFL. But despite those injuries last year, when he could play, he was definitely an exceptional wide receiver that was definitely on pace to have another 1,000-yard season. What do you think about him?
Yeah, and it was so tough when Austin and I were trying to figure it out. Like, do we put Chris Godwin? Do we put Kenny Galladay? But the thing that put Kenny Galladay over the top is he was drafted 12 picks later than Chris Godwin, and he was a legitimate option. And the Giants bring in Galladay because it's a big year for Daniel Jones, and they're giving him a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. I'm sad and scared that he is going to be facing the Cowboys, and their secondary is still a mess. But he has had 2 1,000-yard seasons, and as Austin said, and that's the most in the wide receivers this in this whole draft. So that's what puts him over to the top, and it will be interesting how he plays with the Giants. However, Austin, we talk about like if there was a redraft. I don't think in 2017, maybe the Titans do it at number 5, but I don't think we see a wide receiver selected in the top 5 just because of how many great picks we see later in the first round. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this really proves that there are great wide receivers throughout the draft, and it's really up to scouting. If your team can scout perfectly, um, I mean, imagine if the Lions or a team mentioned before could have taken Chris Godwin and Kenny Galladay. If they took Chris Godwin in the second round, Detroit had a second round pick, the 53rd pick, and with that pick, they took Teez Tabor, a cornerback who is currently not in the league. So if they would have taken Chris Godwin with this pick, or Kenny Galladay with whoever they had higher on their board, and then ended up probably Chris Godwin because Kenny Galladay would have been still waiting at their pick. And then they take Kenny Galladay, and you pair those two rookie wide receivers right next to each other. I mean, you're really getting something together here. Scouting's a big part of the NFL. We've known that for a while. And most people think that wide receivers are essential to win a Super Bowl, unlike some people, especially from the screen across from me, that don't necessarily believe that running backs are the key to success. But I think drafting will be an important thing going forward. We'll see how this last draft turned out that we reviewed, and we'll look forward to making these about running backs or quarterbacks in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Wide receivers are very important. You can't really cut the cost between wide receivers. I think you can cut the cost with running backs. I can just draft one every 4 years. We've talked about how the Rams are starting to do it. Same with the 49ers. But that will be a topic that I look forward to having another time. And it's good looking over some of the gems because third round picks, it really determines the best teams between the teams that can't really do well. It's all about hitting in those. The second and third rounds are really important. Fourth round, and then if you find some gems later, it's really great. Any final thoughts?
No, I had fun looking over this, seeing how the Packers didn't do that great. However, their picks were with wide receivers were very late, and I'm interested to see how the other drafts look with running backs and quarterbacks.
Yeah, that will definitely be fun. So this will be an ongoing series. Next episode, it's starting to get close in the NBA to the NBA finals. So we'll be reviewing the NBA conference. Maybe Austin says or predicts another training firing for any of the 4 teams left. We'll see. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinion.